Ladies and gentlemen, adventurers near and far, Point Noir family, how you feeling today? It's another Tuesday. You already know it. You are listening to a broadcast from Point Noir, home of the Point Noir podcast, where we not only inspire but also equip men of color to go out and see the world for themselves. As always, I'm your host, doing the most, your tour guide for this experience, Jerry III, aka the one and only Kimono Jack, and you are sitting in now for the 35th session of the Point Noir podcast. Listen, I've got to be super transparent, super honest right now. I miss this. I miss y'all. There's something going on here. I feel like we built this kind of relationship, and I'm just in my feels right now. Like, I feel like I need to be releasing shows more often. A week is too long. I miss the mic. So I hope everyone is doing well. Your week is going well. And I got some cool news for everybody this week. I will be out in Cartagena, Colombia with Black Travelgram as a part of one of their group trips, July 26th through 30th. And because they are friends of the show, they said, you know what, we can do something a little bit special for Point Noir listeners. They are offering 50% off the deposit for the booking of the trip. So the booking ends March 6th. The code is Point Noir 50, POINTNOIR 50. And if you go to therealblacktravelgram.com, you can see all the details of the trip. But needless to say, it's going to be dope. They have a Black History section there. You'll be able to tour the city. There'll be a party bus. It'll be a good old time. I'm super stoked to go there. It'll be my first time in Colombia, and if we have enough Point Noir people come out, I'd love to do a Point Noir meet and greet sort of deal, and maybe even record a session down there live. So a big shout out to Black Travelgram. If you're not following them already on IG, they are at Black Travelgram, and their website is therealblacktravelgram.com. So again, you have until March 6th. They extended the deadline just for listeners of the Point Noir show, so I really appreciate that. And you'll get 50% off your deposit for the trip, which again, anywhere you can save a penny or two, that's another taco or another round of shots for your favorite podcast host when you meet them in Colombia. So looking forward to that trip. And if you need more details, hit them up on IG at Black Travelgram or check out the site therealblacktravelgram.com. Of course, I'm always available at Point Noir Show, Kimono Jack, here to answer all your DMs and questions about travel. So I got you covered. That being said, we have another amazing guest coming to share his perspective on travel and the world and his experience. So let's introduce him. Joining us today as our special guest at The Point is Sean Smith. Make sure you find and follow him on Instagram at Sean Smith Dances. And if you're in the local DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth area, check out some of his upcoming performances with the Dallas Black Dance Theater. Now, I don't want to give away his entire story on the show, but this session is incredible, not only because we're live and in person recording this in Dallas, which I really love doing. It's a whole different level of connection, but also because we talk about what Blackness can mean and different Black perspectives just within North America, which is super powerful. Sean is not from the States. You'll learn where he's from in a little bit once you tune into the show, but the way that he's able to analyze and think about his experiences and communicate that is just something that I'm so grateful for. So thank you, Sean, for spending time on the show. And for everyone else, I think you're really going to get a lot out of this session. So, as always, find your delicious beverage of choice, curl up in your coziest chair, coziest couch, and get ready to enjoy another session from us here at Point Noir. I'll see you on the flip side. What's going on, everybody? Kimono Jack here, live and in person with Sean Smith. Thanks for joining us at The Point today, fam. How you feeling?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me on the program.
Absolutely. We're chilling in Dallas, Texas with some drinks. Cheers, my friend.
Yes, cheers. Absolutely. We'll pretend it's evening.
Yeah. Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but
that's right.
I don't always get the opportunity to interview someone in person, and it's really a more unique way to do the show. We do a lot of call-ins, so I appreciate you being available. You're a busy man. You do a lot of things.
Yes, I am. I just actually got finished teaching someone, doing a private lesson on this.
Oh, crap.
On this. It's Monday, but technically it's our weekend because we finished out our performances this weekend. So,
Okay.
Yeah, always staying busy, trying to make a buck where I can.
Wow. Hustle life, the grind life is real, my friend.
That's right, exactly.
And I'm sure we'll get into the type of lesson you were doing later, but why don't you introduce yourself for us? Tell us who you are, where you come from, and how you got started traveling and adventuring. How'd you make it to Dallas, Texas?
Okay, so I'm Sean Smith. I am from Abbotsford, British Columbia. It's a small city outside of Vancouver. So West Coast,
Okay.
Canadian born. I lived there up until I was, I think, 17. Graduated high school, moved out on my own to the big city of Vancouver.
Okay.
And I lived there for 2 years, and I trained there.
Okay.
Then I started traveling a little bit, really out of necessity. I was trying to get work. So I went to Banff in Alberta to do a program there.
Badass motherfucker.
Exactly. Exactly. Banff, Alberta. It's kind of a party town, but
Okay.
it's
It's gotta be. It's called Banff.
Yeah. Some good times were had in Banff, and then in Alberta. Went for a summer there, did a program there, meeting choreographers and working with different people. Then I went to Toronto. I lived there for a year.
Okay.
Which was great, trying to get into Toronto Dance Theater, auditioning for companies. Companies, I danced for some small companies there.
Okay.
And then I moved to New York because I got a grant from the Canadian government to go to school there.
Shout out to your government.
Yeah,
having
shout
money,
out to the government.
being open,
Exactly.
giving grants to people of color. Yeah,
exactly.
right.
And that's actually what it was for. It was actually a grant that was specifically for people of color.
Okay.
So I got a grant to go to New York to study at the Ely School. I was there for 3 years. And then I found out about Dallas Black Dance Theater, where I currently work.
Okay.
And so I moved to Dallas really because of work. And that's really kind of how I was always traveling. It was never because, oh, I want to be in New York, or oh, I want to be in Toronto or Vancouver or Dallas. It was, I want a job. How do I get one?
Right.
And so those cities all afforded opportunities for me, which is what led me to getting on planes and trains and buses. In fact, I was always a very poor traveler. So in those early days of traveling for necessity, I literally, where was I? I think I was in New York and wanting to go home. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have any money, or I had very little money. So I actually took a Greyhound bus from New York to Vancouver.
That's real.
Which is...
How long is that ride?
3 days. No exaggeration, it is 3 days.
And then I got on the Mayflower and arrived in north of the bro.
It was a really cool experience because, especially being Canadian, because and I'm really not just as a Canadian, I think a lot of people, you get sheltered in your own view and your own experience, whether you're used to being in a big city or used to being in a small city or used to being on the West Coast or the East Coast or Midwest or whatever. So New York was really all I had known of the United States at all. And New York it's an American city, but New York is like its own separate thing, as we all know.
It's its own little microcosm of life.
Of a lot of things. And so being on the bus, stopping in all of these cities, going through, I don't know, Montana and Idaho and North Dakota and Minnesota and Kansas. Like, I mean, I saw America for real, if that makes sense. It's really easy, especially for those of us in big cities, to think that everything is, I don't know, progressive or liberal, or you see how, I don't know, mentalities and certain values have shifted. Right. There's a lot of, conservatism and traditional values that are upheld in a lot of places that you're not really, I guess, exposed to all the time. So it was good for me, not in a judgmental way at all, but just being exposed to different ways of life and thought mentalities. And a lot of people on the bus are very talkative. Right. So I had a lot of very interesting conversations. So I did that one. I've also done Dallas to New York, which that's a couple days as well.
On a bus?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I remember the most memorable moment I had was, it was a place called Chickasha, Oklahoma. Chickasha. And it's exactly,
it sounds like a hair care product.
It's exactly, right. So this woman, I sat next to her. I'm not sure how many teeth she had, but I think it was in the single digits. Right. And she, bless her, really nice. She was very talkative, and she told me that she had just gotten out of like an institution. And I said, what happened? She said, well, I had an emotional breakdown. Yeah. She said that she had been married to a man, she divorced him, and she had 2 kids with him. Yeah. And then she remarried. And this woman said, my kids, they disowned me. I said, how old are your children? She said, they're 12 and 9 or something. They were young. Yeah. And I said, why? She said, because my kids don't believe in interracial marriage. Wow. I said, I'm sorry, what? Your children?
12 and 9.
Yeah, they were, I'm guessing, I forget, but they were young. And I thought, I'm sorry, your children don't believe in mixed marriage is what is the term of art that she used. Yeah. But it was a very awakening, eye-opening moment just to realize that like certain things that sort of seem like they're foreign or that we're past certain points. No, a lot of things are still going on that we don't realize, that we think are in the past, but they are currently happening. Right.
Right.
Even moving to the States was like that for me too, because I grew up not around people of color in the United States. And so that's a whole nother experience, you know. So a lot of the racism and a lot of the segregation and a lot of the mentalities and the kind of conversations that are had in black homes, I was not privy to. So when I moved to New York, that was the first time I really started hearing, especially because, like you said, it's a melting pot, an amalgamation of many things. So I'm meeting people from Kansas and Los Angeles and Florida and all these places, and they're talking to me about, as people of color, what their experiences were like as children and as young adults.
Right.
And so to hear about those conversations and like even talking about how a lot of them when they were little, like don't stay out past a certain amount of time, be wary of police officers, always, you know, just be aware of your surroundings in different situations for different reasons, if that makes sense. And so I started to learn really about what that was about really in my 20s when I moved to the States.
Yeah, because it's definitely a different history, a different cultural background.
Exactly.
And let's reverse for a little bit. So professionally, you are a professional trained dancer.
Yes, I am.
So when you say train and you're talking about Ailey, for those who might not be familiar, these are all like some of the top ranking, especially black, you know, Dallas black dance that are just incredible. So that's what you do. That's what got you traveling.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because we mentioned lessons before, and people are like, I don't know, is he a yoga instructor? We have a lot of yoga instructors on the show.
Yes, we're familiar. Yes.
Is he a power lifter?
Right.
And we met through Dallas Black Dance Theater. I love to see the performances. For those who don't know, I used to be a competitive tap dancer in my youth.
Yes, I'm gonna reel you back in for that one. That's like a little goal that I have.
Yeah, I got my Capizios in the closet back there. But yes, that's how we met. But you're originally from Canada. You've been all over, and you're right. The Black American experience is different than other places.
Yes.
The history is much different, and I love that you pointed out that what sometimes are called flyover states.
Yes.
Which is really the breadbasket of America. All that Midwest. That's where you see different views, and when you're used to being in these fast-paced cities, you don't realize that right next door, people think very differently than you. Not right or wrong, just different.
Exactly. Not right or wrong. They're human too, and there's sort of like these South Park caricatures of flyover states, and I think it's important to understand that we're all still made of the same stuff. Yeah, and that you have to. I mean, if we get political, if you want to change the political landscape, you have to relate to these people. Otherwise, you I mean, if you've learned nothing from the last couple of years politically, because I do enjoy, I always enjoy following that stuff. But right. That's one thing that you have to understand is there are real ramifications or outcomes depending on your viewpoint. Yeah. If you decide to not really engage with those people or to sort of toss them aside. And it's easy to get stuck in that echo chamber of your immediate friends or even your social media feeds. They're tailored to the things that interest you, and if you're leaning more left, you'll see more left. That's what I really think is so scary. It's sort of like you would think that now we have so much access to so much information that you'd actually be more well read. Right. But the problem is that you have all of these whether it's Instagram or Facebook, they actually are tailoring to what they think you want to see. Right. So they're actually going to shelter and shadow out a lot of stuff that you would be privy to if you would just, I don't know, turn the page or got to read a full newspaper, for example. Right. Because then you're going to read all the editorials. You're not just going to skip past something. Right. I found that because I often am very curious in terms of conservative perspectives politically. I always get ads talking about whatever Republican is running in my district, and I just kind of laugh because it's just like because it thinks because I'm reading certain things that's what I want to hear. It's like wasted ad spend, but I appreciate your perspective. Right. But what's scary to me is like, well, doesn't matter what side of the aisle that you are interested in. It's scary to me that you're only seeing what you would agree with. Right. Because I've always been interested in what I don't agree with. Right. And why someone would think a particular way, or why someone would come to a different conclusion, and then I don't know. I was on the debate team when I was in high school. Our last guest was on the debate team. We were often debaters, and I don't know what the setup is for most debate classes, but for us, we were given an argument. You didn't come up with I think this. It was here's your argument. This is what you have to argue. Defend it. And then next time, okay, now flip it. Now you're on the defense. Yes. And so you have to learn how to make arguments and justify, if you will, different viewpoints. And so I've from a young age, I was kind of bred to think that way. Right, right.
And I think that's powerful.
Yeah.
I would think that's, you know, one of the prerequisites to critical thinking, which is something that a lot of people
Absolutely.
don't do. But
Yes.
debate team, if you listen to this and you have access to one, you might want to consider it, because it does force you to defend things you might not believe in, but you create logical
Yes.
structures. You learn how to,
because then you
create
understand.
arguments.
You understand what people are, where they're coming from. I think that is more important than anything. Because then, I don't know. Do you talk to people just to reinforce what you think? I mean, I've never understood that. I think that I thought conversation was to have a deeper understanding of something.
Yeah, I don't think everybody has that.
How boring.
True. I can't. Right. Those are just my opinions and my interactions.
Yes.
But I'm curious about. So, I think for people who don't come from the States, especially people of color.
Yes.
The idea of travel is just so much more accessible when you're Canadian, when you're European.
Even though it's way more expensive.
Expense, though, relative to what else is being supported.
That's true. That's true.
There's a shift there that we don't. This could be very. This could be a very interesting discussion. Very quickly when we talk about the different support systems from governments. But what were some things that shocked you when you first started traveling through Canada, from where you were from to going to Banff or Vancouver? Were there some significant moments where you're like, wait a second, this world is different, but it's exciting?
I think what I didn't realize until a few years ago, the 3 Canadian cities that I lived in, which were Abbotsford, Vancouver, and Toronto, are the 3 most culturally and ethnically diverse cities in the country. And so, for me, I was always used to diversity.
Right.
But diversity in itself can be limited in the sense that where I'm from, in Abbotsford, there's a lot of first-generation people.
Right.
And technically, I'm kind of first-generation Canadian, I guess half, in the sense that my father was American.
Okay.
But I grew up but my household, they were all Canadian. So I mean, it wasn't a cultural shift, for them. But a lot of my friends, they were, like, when I think of my friends, Pega Ahani Masula, she was from Iran. Gurpreet Sidhu, she was from India. So I have friends, I remember... I have some friends that I literally, if you asked me what their ethnicity was, I couldn't even tell you. Like, I don't know. I'm like, oh, there's a friend, Alicia Kumar. She's kind of brown. Yeah. I don't know. She might be from Sri Lanka. I literally don't know.
Right.
So I kind of grew up in a way that we tried to, maybe didn't even try, just naturally, especially with my friends. We didn't, ask each other about that stuff because it didn't matter. Like, we were together because we all liked music, or we all liked dance, or we all it was those arts components that brought us together. So I didn't always know or appreciate the diversity of what I was around.
Right.
When I moved to Vancouver is heavily Asian.
Okay.
In fact, I believe white people are the minority in that city. It's predominantly Asian. I think a big part of it, too, is that American universities are incredibly expensive. Yeah. So if you're from China or Japan or Korea, and you're trying to get and you don't want as much competition as there is in your own country or city, you definitely want to be in North America. And if you want to save a little bit of money, you go up north, because the university is just a lot cheaper. Yeah. And so I think that's part of the reason why you have that influx. And so there was a lot of that. And I think I was so focused on school that I don't think I really necessarily appreciated what was around me culturally, if that makes sense. Okay. I go back now and I'm like, I just look and I go, oh my gosh, just the amazing food that we have. Like, some of the best. I mean, we're next to the ocean and you got a bunch of Asian people, your sushi is going to be great. Right. Or the fact that you can be downtown Vancouver and you can look and see snow on the mountains and look down at the beach and see the ocean and see the big... I forget what some of the gems and the beauties that we have in those cities. In Toronto, I would say that was the first time I had kind of that moment that you're talking about, where I was kind of realized that I was in a new environment, because unlike Abbotsford or Vancouver, Toronto has a very predominant black population. Okay. Most black people who live there are not from Canada. I know very few black Canadians. Very few.
I was going to ask you that.
And so most of people that you see in Toronto, actually generally, it doesn't matter what color you are, but people who are black are probably going to be from Jamaica or Trinidad or
West Indies.
Exactly. So you see a lot of that. So again, there's tons of Caribbean spots in terms of restaurants and culture and music, and we have Caravana and all the festivals and all that. So there's that celebration, and I danced with a company there called Ballet Creole. Now, interestingly enough, here's my ignorance. I saw an audition sign. I was 19 years old. I saw an audition that said Ballet Creole. I don't really, the term Creole, I've heard it, but I didn't really know exactly what it meant. So I thought I was auditioning for a ballet company. So I go to this audition, did no research, just ignorant. I didn't have a cell phone either, so I guess I have some excuse, but not really. So there was life before cell phone, so I had no excuse. So I show up. There were more musicians, drummers, than there were dancers at this audition. They had like 6 drummers. They were doing all of these movements from different traditions from the Caribbean and Africa. And so I was kind of looking like, I don't know what this is. So I looked kind of crazy, I'm sure. But they let me in the company anyway. And I was training in the Dunham technique, which is heavily influenced in terms of traditional modern dance, but also a lot of Caribbean traditional dances as well are pulled from to help create this technique.
No way.
Yes. So Catherine Dunham is her name, and she was an amazing educator, dancer, choreographer, had her own company, has her own technique, and she pulled from history. And so she was...
And it's not an easy technique. It is.
No.
It is work. It's straight. From what I understand, and my limited knowledge.
Yes, your thighs will be burning. You'll be articulating through every single chakra in your body. It's amazing.
To open up all your chakras.
Exactly. So, but yeah, so that wasn't the first time when I was really exposed to any sort of black culture, if that makes sense. Because I grew up in a white family. Yeah. And so my brother and my sister, they have different fathers, so they were white. My mom was white, and I didn't grow up with my father, so I didn't know, I had no connection to sort of anything black. And I kind of rejected it a little bit when I was younger because a couple of my teachers, they saw me very much as a token. Not in a mean way, in a loving way. I still don't like it, but I understand they weren't coming from a mean place. My grade 7 teacher, oh, by the way, cultural interest. The Canadian and American speech is like so similar. So like anything that's different, I like hold on to it. So you all say a 7th grade, we say grade 7. So there's one small, tiny little difference. So in grade 7, my teacher, Mrs. Howe, she put a book on my desk. It was a book about Malcolm X. And she said, you need to read this so you understand your history. Something about that. And I remember just feeling...
White teacher?
No, she was actually, again, she's actually, I think, again, cultural difference. We would say First Nations. You all say, I think, Native American.
No, we should say indigenous people. But First Nations, is... We're getting to the better terms.
So we say First Nations. So she was First Nations. But she put a book on my desk. That was about Malcolm X, and I remember feeling very angry because I felt like I thought if I should read this book, we should all read this book. That's how I felt. Like I didn't want a separate or tailored education for myself.
You want to be
different than people. I hated that. Like that stuff really pissed me off. But then when I got older, I felt differently about it. And then especially because I wasn't around black people, so I had this very sort of like complicated and like weird feeling of like being disassociated, if that sort of makes sense. But I won't get too much into that because we only have 60 minutes. But we could talk about that for hours. But anyway, so when I got in Toronto, I was around black people for the first time, and I was dancing in a black company with people. And again, it's a Caribbean company, so they were all from Trinidad, Jamaica, and Cuba, and all these places, and they're mixed up with all types of things too. And so that I really related to, and it really resonated with me, and they were so welcoming. And didn't question my authenticity as a person of color. They helped me embrace a movement style that I wasn't comfortable with and that I wasn't familiar with yet. But as a person, they never questioned the legitimacy of my ethnicity, if that makes sense. And so that was very welcoming, and that was really important for me. So when I moved to New York, I sort of already had that, being around African American students, which that was different. I would say that was a lot more like I had heard. I'd never heard the term light skin before. When I was in New York, that was I was 20. I'm at 20 years old. That was the first time I heard the term light skin. Or someone used the term red. Or even so that was definitely weird for me to hear that. I'm like, why are black people talking like this? Also, the first time I saw black women with straight hair.
That was the first time you saw black women.
I mean, on TV, obviously, but like in real life. Oh, in Ballet Creole, all those women, they had natural hair. So when I moved I literally in New York, I remember looking at something. I'm like, is that how it grows out of her head? Was literally, I'm like, how is your... And I didn't say it, thank God, but I was like, why is her hair straight?
Right.
Like, I didn't understand I didn't understand why people go to the effort to straighten the hair. It just didn't... It literally didn't make any sense to me. I didn't understand it. I understood it later. But, so there was that, and sort of... And definitely, like, a thing where people would see me in that environment... where they would say, like, oh, you're Canadian, oh, you're biracial, or you're not African American. And I knew that I wasn't African American, but I'm saying, like, it was a lot more like identifying people by their race, ethnicity, skin color, and sort of that being like a first assessment of a person.
Wow.
Within the culture, within the community. That was the first time I felt that.
It seems so sudden and dramatic, but rightfully so. Like how quickly you had to change your view, or not change, or just one thing that gets me is somebody might say something I disagree with, but the way that I think is now I have to process like you. Like, how did you get to that conclusion? And that's really what stresses me out about dealing with people the most. It's like, now I got to think in this inefficient way. But how was that introduction for you? And I really want you to talk to Ballet Creole, because I think you're probably going to be one of our few guests who can. And I want people to understand how it's different and what you felt there, because...
Oh, and the environment and the culture.
Yeah, transitioning to New York, where you have a lot of first and second generation people from the West Indies. Now you have a part of the culture that they might not even identify with. Can you talk to me about Ballet Creole and some things that you realized or adopted that like empowered you?
I think there was a couple things. I think, as I say, I'll delve into this a little bit deeper. I would say that because a lot of people, like for example, the director Patrick Parson is from Trinidad. Okay. And in Trinidad, there are a lot of people there's a lot of Indian influence, like people from India. And so I know in Canada we use the term Dougla, I think, Dougla, which I believe, if I'm correct, refers to a person who is half black, half Indian. Wow. And when I say Indian, I mean someone from India.
From India.
And so when we use, again, another point, in Canada we use the term East Indian, which is always so bizarre. I'm like, there is one India. But we use that term for someone who's actually from India. Okay. And so he even talked about, maybe I shouldn't say publicly, but he has talked about, like, even in his history, you know, we have all this 23andMe and all that stuff, but at that time people weren't really doing that. He was like, I don't really know exactly what percentage or what influence I have in me, but that doesn't change the fact that he knows that he's black and can celebrate that. Yeah. And I remember one time we were doing a piece, I forget the name of it, but it was celebrating the idea of people who came to North America on slave ships from different countries, who had different songs, different ways of moving, different rhythms, different languages, coming together and celebrating that in a dance. So celebrating, this is the dance that is native to my tribe, country, city, and this is mine, and this is mine, and this is mine, all to kind of like one string, like a suite, if that makes sense. Yeah. So we're doing all these different dances in a row. And he just grabbed me one day and he just literally, he grabbed my hand and he kind of like rubbed my arm, like referring to my skin. He just said, just know that when you do this dance, you're celebrating this. Yeah. And so that was a way, I feel like he gave me permission, if that makes sense. 100, bro. He gave 100%. Me permission to celebrate a particular continent that is part of me. Yeah. And even though I didn't have that culturally growing up, that it's okay to celebrate that. I had people, I won't say who, but I have had people in my family who have sort of, not all of them, and certainly, like, it's certainly not my immediate family. My sister, my brother, my mother were all very supportive and wonderful. But some people who are a little further out in my family who would kind of question, like, my interest in my black roots. Like, why bother? What's the significance? Exactly. Like, why would you want to do you think you're part of that now? Or do you think you're one of them, kind of a thing? Yeah. When I was younger, and I think that really stuck with me. Yeah. And so I feel like that was the first time I felt like I was allowed. I was allowed to be black, and I was allowed to celebrate it. Yeah. And it doesn't, and it's hard because I usually don't talk about this, and I don't like to refer to myself in a particular way, but it doesn't take, because I think it speaks for itself. Like when I step on stage with Ballet Creole or the Ailey School in New York City, which is, you know, obviously coming from an African-American tradition from Alvin Ailey, who was on the shoulders of Catherine Dunham, who we just spoke about.
Wow.
Or when I dance with Dallas Black Dance Theater, like, I feel like it speaks for itself. You can see me, if that makes sense, and who I'm dancing with. And that doesn't take away from my family. It doesn't take away from me being half white. It doesn't take away from me being Canadian.
Right.
It's all 100%. It's kind of like my sister and my brother. We have different fathers, but I don't call them my half sister or my half brother.
Right.
Because they're 100% a person.
Same
me. It's like I usually don't say half anything because I'm a whole person.
Right.
I am black, I am white, I am biracial, I'm Canadian, I'm all of those things. I have an American father, I have a Canadian mom, like all of that is true. So it doesn't take away. So that experience with Ballet Creole gave me that permission, I felt. And I feel like in the Caribbean culture, I think because there is so much diversity in it, I think that, again, that's sort of built in.
Right.
I remember I worked at Subway sandwiches for several years.
Okay.
2 years in Vancouver, a year in Toronto, and for 3 years in New York City. Bless that organization. But I remember in Toronto, there was a girl who I worked with, and when you look at her, you see someone who's Asian, and she is. Ethnically, she is Asian. She's from Jamaica.
Yeah.
So she had a very thick Jamaican accent.
Wow, yeah.
And I remember just looking at her like looking at, I don't know, like a dog listening to a high pitched noise.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, you're a unicorn to me, because I'm not used to it. Like, to see a particular person and to hear a particular tone come out of their voice.
Right.
You know, and I feel ignorant in a way now, because I'm like, it's so irritating when it's done to me all the time. You know, and people don't realize how much of a backhanded compliment it is to say, you're so articulate. I'm like, yeah, I speak English. Like, I don't. People used to ask me, why do you speak like your sister who's white? Why do you speak like your brother? I'm like, because we all go to the same school, and we all have this. We grew up in the same house.
Yeah,
we learned to speak English from the same person. Like, why would I speak differently than them?
Right.
And so there's a black expectation that's put on people all the time.
That's different. And
so I felt like at Ballet Creole that was kind of stripped away, which I really appreciated.
That's powerful, bro. And I think you mentioned how diverse the West Indies are. And but also that they have very strong traditions of celebration amongst each other. So it's been years and years and years, decades, generations of, you know what, we're all Carnival, we're going to come together, all these colors, all the dancing, everything, all the music. This needs to be celebrated. And I definitely respect and can relate directly to feeling like you had permission to celebrate being who you already were.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
It's...
It seems so dumb. It seems so obvious. It seems so
simple, but it's so powerful. Yeah. And I had those experiences traveling to Africa, even being embraced by the West Indies, the Antillais, in Paris, was just like, oh, wait a second, we have this in common, we share this, and then going to Africa and people just adopting you literally into their families. It gives you that permission to come back here and say, wait a second, I know it's easy to categorize me based on how I look and your preconceived notions, but this is all that's coming with it. Yes. That's powerful. And the fact that, you know, understanding that as a dancer and as a professional dancer of your caliber, that translates to your performances, because as a dancer of the Dallas Black Dance Theater, you guys talk a lot about cultural issues, either present or past ones. You have significant pieces. Matthew Rushing just restaged Odetto on you guys the first time since he did it with the infamous Alvin Ailey company. Like, you're channeling a lot of these stories. So I imagine that all of your journeys it's like a positive accumulation of experience and tradition and narrative.
Yes, absolutely.
That's... Shout out to you. I can't do what you do. I can't do
We all have individual gifts and talents.
Right.
What was interesting is that I, even in this liberation, I felt there are times when you still, it's funny, I feel like you can suppress insecurities, you can deal with insecurities, but I don't think they necessarily ever go away completely.
That's fair.
And so I remember last year we were doing a piece. It was called Displaced Yet Rebirthed. And it was choreographed by Michelle Gibson, who is from Louisiana. Okay. And the piece was about Hurricane Katrina, and it was very cathartic. Wow. In the sense it was very deep. It was talking about what the people actually went through, and people who had to rush, and people who got left behind, and then all the displacement that happened afterwards of people being in different states and different cities and trying to figure out how to navigate that and maintain their culture, all of that. And so in the process, she was she's a deeply spiritual person, and she would pray with us, she would have conversations with us, and she was very invested, and she got us to be invested too. And there was a day when she was talking about culture and talking about how things are just within us,
right?
And she started singing something. She started singing this gospel song, and then people were it was like a call and response.
Yeah.
She sang a line, and everyone else sang back.
Yeah.
And everyone's mouths were moving except mine, because I had no idea what song she was singing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't grow up in a black family. I didn't grow up in church. I didn't grow up in a black church. So all that music, I had no idea.
Wow.
And so I had a moment where I felt like I kind of just stood there because I didn't know what to do. And you sort of, I don't want to say I felt left out, because no one was trying to do that, but I felt like I didn't know. I felt removed from it. I'm like, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
You read a lot of books and you're around this, but you're not really from it.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But like, you have that moment where you're like, oh, right.
Right.
You're not, I don't know. You're not the same, I guess.
Right. Or just,
but no one's the same. That's the thing. It's like,
right.
But there are certain connectivities that people have.
Right. It's not necessarily the exact same, the way that the design has been put out into the fabric. Same fabric, same material, but just a different design.
Exactly.
But I think that takes a lot of humility, and I'm going to step and close the door.
Okay.
Because it's windy. But
yes, it is.
I'll get back in front of
this cold day in Dallas.
Yes, chilly.
Yes.
As a leader, you have a leadership position within the company. I think that takes a lot of humility to still present yourself authentically, and I think being vulnerable, which allows you to be a very impactful dancer, but also an impactful, you give notes, you coach, you lead. I think that's a huge positive characteristic of just who you are, because not everybody's able to say, when I go out in the club and people know all these Dallas dances that I don't know what the hell is going on. Yeah, I can feel some sort of way about that, but that's not my job.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, no one's paying me to be there and feel some sort of way like, shit, okay.
Right. I feel you.
So, I mean, kudos to you, because you're still in a position of leadership. Whether you identify with that moment or not, people are still looking to you for direction to bring these powerful performances on for the rest of us who get to see it. That's a big deal, bro.
Yes.
That's a big deal.
Yes.
That's huge. That's huge. And my big question for you right now is, do you think you would have had these self-realizations without leaving your hometown?
No, never.
Do you think you would have had it without leaving Canada?
No.
Okay. And
it just...
I mean, Toronto is intensely international.
Yeah, it's arguably the most culturally and ethnically diverse city in the world. I mean, you can't really measure those things, but I mean, you can't. I mean, the hundreds of languages spoken.
Oh my goodness!
There's a lot that would support that argument.
Right.
No, I actually think being in places like Dallas and New York, and being specifically in Queens, I think those experiences sort of being in more... How do I say it correctly? I may not say it correctly, but that's okay.
It's okay.
But being in places that are less diverse and more saturated with one either mentality or culture, ethnicity, or all three, that also is very eye-opening, because I think being in a multicultural city is also a mentality, if that makes sense.
Right.
You're used to being, I guess, what's the word? Tolerant, open, exposed.
Very much flow.
So in places that actually aren't that way, you also learn a lot too.
Right.
About mentality and how people think and where things come from, and I think I wouldn't have experienced the same thing in Canada, and so I'm glad that I've been here.
Yeah.
Yes. And even being in Dallas, I think I was sort of raised to be somewhat ignorant, which I think is good in the sense that being raised to sort of like not be afraid, not have a chip on your shoulder all the time, and kind of just be open. And so I moved to Dallas that way, which can also get into trouble too. But I went to Fort Worth. Well, Dallas was great. Again, I moved here for the work, and I love Dallas. It's beautiful. It's great. So in my first week, I went to the rodeo in Fort Worth, and I went with a friend named Dion, who is a white woman from South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
My closest friend, Michelle Hebert, who is, she's white from Detroit, and I actually met her in Ballet Creole.
Okay.
We danced together there, and we also danced together at Dallas Black Dance Theater, and then also Rachel McSween. She's a black woman,
Mm-hmm.
and she danced also with Dallas Black Dance Theater. So
Okay.
it was the four of us,
Yeah.
very, all the colors of the rainbow going to Fort Worth,
Sure.
and we went to the rodeo. I was wearing purple jeans and cowboy boots, and I had like a long, like tailored coat with tails on it. Like it was a lot. So I was a spectacle. I knew my outfit was ridiculous.
But
I
you-
didn't think people would be staring at me like that.
We call that showing the fuck up. You showed the fuck up to the rodeo.
Yeah, but I didn't realize like it was, cobblestone streets,
You
a
didn't
lot
realize
of
what
chaps,
Fort Worth was.
which I didn't realize what it was, and I was like, what was really uncomfortable for me was that was the first time in my life that I went and literally, besides me and Rachel, every person of color that I saw
Mm-hmm.
was shining a shoe or selling a t-shirt or making a drink. Every single person of color that I saw, besides the two of us, they were essentially people of service.
Mm-hmm.
And it started to sort of invest in me. Like, there are things that make me uncomfortable now that wouldn't have made me uncomfortable before.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's a fine profession, so I don't... It's really just something that I've developed. It's nothing against anyone, but like...
Right.
When I see a person of color shining someone's boots, the imagery I find to be a little bit disturbing. Again,
Right.
if that's your job, take it, make your money.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I have swept floors, I have made sandwiches, I've made pizzas, I've answered phones, I've been a mascot.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've been as close to minstrelsy as it gets. So
Yeah.
I'm nothing against anyone who takes that employment, but when I see that, it kind of like makes you sort of, I don't know, back up a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and kind of take a pause, because it's indicative, I think, of a lot of things that are happening in the culture that I think we pretend that aren't.
That's real. That's real. And I like the way you phrased it, delicately.
Yes.
And with a lot of context. Because like you said, it's work and it's important. You got to take care of yourself.
Yes.
But there are some systemic things that exist here in the States that are the reasons why more of us aren't successful business owners,
Right.
Entrepreneurs, or advancing in corporate America, or
Exactly.
even getting into college,
Yes.
finishing high school, finishing college. Like, there are systemic things,
Yes.
and you being able to be sensitive to that
Mhm.
just by walking in that space, I think, is significant, because the Canadian, even just being Canadian is so different from being American.
Yes, it is.
We see them as similar, but it's totally different. Taking a trip to Toronto, while it might not seem like the international trip of your dreams,
Mhm.
could change your life.
Yes.
Because there's just the fabric, the history is so different. The support system, the education system,
Yes.
the
Yep.
identity of
Yep.
a Canadian is different than what the American roots their identity in.
Absolutely.
And that's significant.
Yes.
Like, I've learned so much from all of my Canadian friends. I'm learning a lot here right now,
Mhm.
and it's really that different. If you don't know a Canadian on this, today, go find a Canadian. Go be friends. Go
I'm
make friends
here.
with a Canadian.
I'm here. Yes.
That's powerful, bro. And I know you've also traveled to other places throughout
Yes.
the world.
Mhm.
Could you name somewhere that wasn't in the States that just, something you'll remember for the next 10 years that was just a monumental shift for you, or just
Okay,
impressive?
so I started traveling. So in the company with Dallas Black, we performed in Belize twice.
Okay.
And then we went to Edinburgh, Scotland, which was amazing.
Yeah.
I would say that, and then I started to get the travel bug myself.
Okay.
And so I started to take a few trips on my own, and the first one was to the Bahamas, and I went to Nassau, and the second time I went to Freeport.
Yeah.
But the first time I went to Nassau, there were two things that I thought were interesting. One that kind of piggybacks on what you talked about earlier was they have a festival called Junkanoo.
Okay.
I believe it was Christmas Day. I forget if it's Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. But basically, I went to this hotel downtown. They have these little, like, very scary, rickety little buses that you pay like $1 to get on.
Right.
There's no seatbelts. You're going down. So we went downtown and snuck into, like, the Hilton, and they have these tents. So I snuck into the Hilton and just, like, went into one of the little tents that they have, like, close to the beach, and I slept. Woke up at 1 a.m.
Right.
because that's when it starts.
Right.
And the town during the day is a ghost town. No one's working. No one's out.
Right.
At 1 a.m., children, grandparents, people young and old, everyone, the music starts. They have drums and instruments, and they all have these elaborate costumes, like costumes that were like 3 times the size of the person wearing it.
Wow.
And
it's like a mummers thing.
It's crazy. And they have competitions and stuff.
Okay.
And so literally they dance, they dance throughout the streets all night, way into the morning.
Wow.
I think I left at like 4 or something, but it was amazing just to see that it was everyone. It wasn't just like, you know, a particular demographic or an age group, or it was everyone and their kids and their grandparents out celebrating. You know, you don't see that here.
What was the celebration for? Do you remember the significance of the...
Of Junkanoo? I don't remember that specifically. I'd have to look that up.
I'll Google it.
Yes,
do your Googles, kids. That's
Junkanoo.
what we do on the show. Junkanoo.
Junkanoo, yes.
Wow.
There was that, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum, there was someone who yelled at... It's funny, I was with someone, and we were walking down the street, literally just walking.
In Bahamas still?
Yes.
Okay.
And someone yelled out a homophobic slur.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always dealt with this the same way. I keep walking because I don't I'm not really interested in engaging with a conversation with someone like that because and not even out of fear of being dangerous. I'm just like, why would I insult my own intelligence? If I were to yell, I always think, like, if I were to step out of it, if the person that I'm looking at being you know, yelled at with this homophobic slur, if you're gonna yell back, it's like, what's your goal? Like, what are you, like, literally, what are you trying to do?
Right.
Besides prove that you're a man. I already know that I'm a man. I don't need to prove it to you, especially you, because you're not obviously very intelligent if you're gonna yell that at me. So I just keep walking. And the other person that I was with was trying to do that, was trying to go. I'm like, just leave him alone. Who cares?
Right.
Like, literally, who cares? And I've dealt with that in my hometown too. Like, that stuff still happens up north, and certainly
in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that happens in Dallas to me, actually, because I don't walk. I mean, sorry, I don't drive. I only walk.
Okay.
I take Uber. Like, I've just never driven. My mom didn't get her license until I was 16.
Really?
So I'm just used to walking. Also, Toronto and New York City, like, come on, like. You just walk.
Right.
So in Dallas, I just walk everywhere. So I'm walking, and I often look at the drive-by. People just screaming stuff out.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, actually, last week in Wichita Falls, someone yelled out the M-word to me.
Yeah.
Like, literally, these white guys just drove by and just yelled it out, and then they keep driving.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like, again, so when you see that, it kind of reminds you of, like, it's all still around.
But the fact that it happens in where you're from, in Abbotsford, yes. Abbotsford.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of these experiences aren't... We think they're so unique to us being in the States because of our history, but people watch what we do.
They're influenced by that for sure, and I think just otherism is a real thing.
Yeah.
Humans are built to be skeptical and afraid of things they're not familiar with.
Right.
That's just the human condition. If I saw someone who was green...
Right.
across the street, I'd be concerned, like, because I've never seen that before, and you wonder, why are they green?
Right.
So, like, that's just part of. So it's very natural. So I think it's also important to understand, like, that's within us.
Right.
Just like I said, with that woman who's Asian but has a Jamaican accent, like we're triggered to be confused, make a joke or whatever because we're not used to it.
Right.
So until you accept that, nothing ever gets changed. You've got to accept that. Like when people say, "I don't see color," I'm like, "Oh, you dumb. I can't." Oh, you real dumb. Or ignorant. Like you're not being honest with yourself.
Right.
You're not being honest with yourself.
There are levels to this argument logically.
Yeah. So there's a musical. I forget. Is it the one with all the puppets?
Okay.
Everyone's a little bit racist, I think is the song. It's in a musical.
Oh,
and I've seen it too, and it's a really funny
That's
musical.
one where they also have the skit that the internet is for porn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like Muppets, but like if South Park and Family Guy got a hold of them. That's
it's really funny too.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about that the other day. How humor, because I love comedy, and I was watching some old Mad TV sketches.
Yeah.
And I watched some of them, and I'm like, SNL would not do that today.
No.
Like, people used to say, like the N-word would be in it. Remember with Richard Pryor with SNL? Like, that, no one does that stuff anymore, because I do think the culture has shifted too far in terms of being incredibly overly censored and sensitive, and everything is offensive.
Right.
Like, that stuff I hate. Just like you talked about being sheltered in one viewpoint. It's like, oh, you can't say something that's going to offend me, because then, well, like I said, yell the M word at me. Now, please, I'm not encouraging it. But I'm saying, I'm like, I'm okay.
Right.
Like, I'm not damaged. Like, I'm not physically harmed. Like, I don't know. I do have a traditional view on this a little bit, like sticks and stones kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I think that we've just become a little too culturally sensitive in some ways.
That's fair. And if you look at a lot of stuff, I mean, George Carlin's 7 Words, Eddie Murphy's Raw. But what I think might be helpful is to get an understanding of how have you learned to deal with this. I know, growing up with the whole sticks and stones might break my bones, but words will never hurt me sort of thing is cool in theory, right? And I'm masterful when it comes to theory, but in practice, can you take us back to when you first had to learn to deal with that, and what did you talk yourself through? Because a lot of men of color specifically, and people of color, are afraid of traveling overseas because they're like, shoot, if they're going to call me a nigger in the street here, why would I pay $1,000 to go to France and have the same shit happen to me?
Right.
And they don't realize that the context is different. But if it were to happen, how do you talk yourself through that moment?
Well, I have to say, first of all, I'm and I hate this word, but it's true in this case. I am, in a sense, very privileged. In the sense that I am what you could refer to as a light-skinned black man. When you look at me, I don't have any kind of affectations in my language in the way that I speak that
no strong accent
me to a particular
or
place. I used to, by the way. I trained myself out of it.
Okay.
I started hearing my own Canadian accent and I started to hate it.
Okay.
So I trained myself to use, which I think is actually kind of, and I just said this, so I'm contradicting myself, a kind of offensive term, but to learn how to do standard speech. Apparently that's like a technical term that people use in schools.
That is a technical term.
So, Julia Roberts, you have a voice that would not indicate what region of the United States you're from. So
neutral accent.
So that is also very helpful. I speak a little bit of French, not well, but a little bit. So, for example, like you just said, being in France, I didn't encounter any of that when I was in Paris because I think walking around, you wouldn't know that I'm not from there.
Right.
For example, so it was interesting seeing, and there's actually a lot of black people that I saw that were there. And again, they look at all different tones and shades and this, all natural hair.
Yep.
No saggy pants ever.
Right.
You don't see anyone's underpants. But you also will see certain American influences with like, saw this one guy who had Nikes that were literally completely bedazzled, like all the way around, like stuff that you'd be like, oh, that's some ghetto shit, but you see it but done in a specific way. So I blend in very well. Right. I will say in Marseille, smaller cities are a lot more like, oh, who are you? Right. Especially if you're by yourself. Right. And there's actually a really predominant African influence in Marseille that I didn't know about.
Historically significant.
There's this area that you can get like all these like spices and like all these markets that sell like fabrics and all different types of oils, and I really wanted to visit it. And so I met these guys randomly, these white guys, at a restaurant, and they were really cool. We talked. He was an author, one of them, and just really sweet. Yeah. I went to dinner one night, just really great. And so we were walking really late one night after coming from a bar, and I looked over and I made some sort of joke because I saw a bunch of black folks that were sitting in a restaurant, and I said, oh, there they are, there's my people, or something like that. Right. And he looked at me and he said something that I thought was just so loaded. He said, oh, they're not like you. Wow. And so what I tell myself in that moment, I'm just like, okay, you're by yourself. You're 28 years old at this point. You don't have a working phone, probably. I just kind of like talk, and it's like 1 a.m. I said, I'm not going to say anything. Right. I always think past the current moment. That's how I think. I think a lot of people, not that they've instigated the trouble, but they make it, they can make things worse by being reactionary in the moment. And my thing is like, I want to be alive. I want it, not that it was a life-threatening moment, but I'm not interested in an altercation right now. Right. Just like if, someone in my family, this happened. I was home one time and I was playing, I forget, is it Mad Gab? One of those card games where you have to like pick certain things like that you like thankful someone will guess or whatever. Yeah,
like apples to apples or something.
Right.
Like that.
And then literally every time it was my turn, it was always some bullshit. Like every card would be like minstrelsy, slave, like it was all this stuff, and I was like,
holy shit.
And I'm like, really? I choose to not engage because I just think maybe it's an ego thing. I just think I'm above that stuff.
So then where do you find your strength? Where do you find that resiliency? Is it in your art? Is it in your friends, your close circle? How can someone tap into that? Because it's powerful. You're right. Not being reactionary. And we are, a very emotional
Yeah,
people.
it's very interesting. I find that there's this effort in Black culture, and I assume that it's a lot of stuff that you've learned through experience of needing to prove yourself.
Yeah.
So when you're having an argument with someone, it's because I'm proving myself to be legitimate.
Yeah.
And I don't feel the need to do any of that. So that's
Yeah.
why I ignore. I've had friends arguing with bartenders and stuff, and like
Yeah.
having screaming matches, and you're not letting me into this, and that happens a lot in Dallas, and people being not let into clubs and stuff, and like people just having these altercations, and I'm like, I've always felt this way. If you don't want to deal with me, I don't want to deal with you.
Right.
If you don't want to sell me a wedding cake, I don't want you to have my money.
Right.
And I'd actually rather know.
Right.
I'd rather know, please tell me that you're not going to serve me.
Right.
So I can leave and I can give my money to someone else. I believe in capitalism, you see.
But you
So I'm going to give my money. You see what I'm saying? That's how I think the fight is won.
Right.
Because I'm going to put my money in places and my talent in places that will accept me.
Right.
You're a dance company and you tell me you're a ballet. This happens to me all the time. Oh, ballet companies. Oh, we love you. Yeah, you're more of a modern dancer. Oh, okay. I'm not gonna. I've just learned through my experiences, and I won't get into the personal stuff. But like growing up, I went through a lot of disappointment. So I've learned I don't ever fight for anyone's love, respect, or any of that. I just go where it is, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you have to fight for that, you don't respect me. You don't love me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If I have to ask for it, no. I don't. I choose to not engage with you. Whether that's an employer, whether that's a friend, like I don't fight for any of that. I just go where it is.
Right.
That's where I get my strength from.
That's
And also
so
just
powerful.
accepting that I'm not. That's why I don't engage with a person yelling at me, because I don't think I can change you.
Right. Right.
You'll learn eventually.
Right.
But I'm not the one.
Right.
Maybe I just don't have the energy either. That like being at home and stuff. Like I am not like. Do not ask me my Black perspective right now.
Right.
White people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
I'm just not, because I'm not going to be the representative today. I'm not
Right.
going to do it.
Right.
Like people if I'm in a work setting and someone asks me, like a patron or someone about like, why are you called Dallas Black Dance Theater? I'll explain that.
Right.
But if I'm in a personal setting with my family, like, why do you feel that? I can't. I'm just living my life, doing what I'm doing, and I don't need to explain it or justify it to you because I'm good.
That's very, very real. And I kind of sum that up as I choose to spend my energy, my money, my time where I'm appreciated, not tolerated.
Yes.
But it also comes on the flip side of that is you have the confidence and the experience to know that, you know what, somebody will serve me. Somebody
Yeah.
will meet my needs. And I think that's a huge thing that people can learn from is that the first three options might not be the best options, right? The first three trips might not be the best trips or experiences you have abroad. But you know what? You are valued somewhere, and just stay encouraged to know that will arrive.
But I also know that we also need people who are going to fight too. Like I'm not the one, but there needs to be a one. So I also appreciate people who will stand up and speak truth,
Right.
Because that does need to happen.
Yeah.
So I think, it works itself out in a way where there are people who react differently to different things. And I think also too, for me, again, with going back to family, how much that shapes your worldview.
Yeah.
I also just have the opinion and just the mentality of because I moved out at 17, I had my own job and I paid for all my own schooling. The government obviously helped too, but like I was very independent.
Yeah.
So I've always just done what I wanted. Like I'm gonna go dance. I'm gonna move to Texas. I didn't like check in with anyone.
No,
I'm doing that. Same thing
get
with
it.
like if I'm gonna date someone, if one day I want to get married, or I don't check in with anyone.
Right.
And maybe that's I don't know. Like I would never go to a family member and say, is it okay if, no, I'm
Right.
doing this.
Right.
You can support me or not. Like I literally don't care. I love you.
Right.
It was funny. It was someone who, talking about personal stuff, there was someone in my family who said to me years ago, oh, I just want you to know that I really accept who you are, talking about like who I might date or whatever. And I remember thinking like, I don't care. Even though he was coming from a good place,
Right.
I'm like, I literally don't care.
Right.
Because it's nothing to do with you.
Right.
It's like not like it has nothing to do with you. Like
Right.
I don't need your acceptance. I don't look for it. I don't.
Right.
A lot of people need that, but I think again, just because of my experience and being so independent, that's part of it too. Like I just learned because my mom got really sick when I was young, so I had to get myself everywhere. I had to figure out how to get to school and competitions and my dance recitals. Like I did that myself, and it was scary because I'm like, how am I going to do this? And then you realize like, oh, you look up the bus schedule, you go to the bus stop, you pay the thing, and you just through that I just learned like, oh, it's not that hard,
and it's not a mystery. I can figure this out.
Right. I moved to New York. I just figured it out. People are like, oh, it's so scary, it's so big. I'm like, there are signs everywhere. I'm fine.
Right.
I was a little ignorant. Like I wasn't scared. I probably should have been more, my eyes open and stuff. I walk really fast though. That does help.
Right.
But I was like, I'll just look at the signs. I arrived at the airport. I went to the subway. I went to Brooklyn. It was like midnight, walking around, trying to find the place I was. Like I don't know. When you go through that stuff and you're okay at the end of the day, you just sort of, you're like, oh, I'm fine. Yeah. I've been broke and been fine. Like so I'm not afraid of anything. Right. Because I've been through stuff. So that's why I think shielding people too much, and again with the people being offended, like because I've been through that and survived it, I'm like, you're not going to throw me off my game. I'm good.
Right.
I'm good.
That's huge, bro. And I think even in small ways, to push yourself, push that level of discomfort and realize that you're going to be okay, I think that would be powerful for a lot of us, man. And dude, I know we were talking quickly. I know we were, but that's just where this conversation was at. I love it. Dude, thank you so much. I'm glad we finally got this through. And what's coming up for you? What's next in terms of any projects you have that you want to talk about? Any upcoming trips? What's up for Sean Smith?
So for work, Dallas Black Dance Theater, we are performing Dancing Beyond Borders. That is our company, the main company, with Dallas Black Dance Theater Encore, which is our second company. Okay. And so both companies will be performing together on that program. You can go to our website, dbdt.com, or just Google us, Dallas Black Dance Theater. The theater is spelled with an R-E on the end. And so that program is called Dancing Beyond Borders. We'll be at the Eisman Theater in Richardson and also Fort Worth, Texas. Okay. So that's in March. And then I just got my ticket the other day. I'm going to Owen Sound, which is just a couple hours outside of Toronto, to visit my uncle and my grandmother, who just turned 78 on Valentine's Day. Okay. And then I'll be in Miami after that. I go to Miami probably 3 times a year. I love the ocean and the sand. Right. And then in the summer, I think I'm going to be, I'll be in Costa Rica for a wedding, Michelle Hebert. Okay. And then I'll be home in Vancouver to teach some workshops there. I definitely want to go back to Europe again, so that's the next big thing I want to do. Okay.
And what's your dream trip? Like, out of all the experiences you've had, what's the one place that you're just like, I hate to use the term bucket list, but this is my bucket list trip?
Well, I've been there already, but I love Barcelona. Okay. Barcelona is just absolutely, it's like a movie. It's like, I don't know, it's like Aladdin and Batman together with like the cobblestone streets and all the tall old buildings, and then you've got these gorgeous beaches, and then the food is great. Like, it's just great. And the one language that you can like totally fake and get through the easiest, I think, is Spanish. So just because it's very easy to read, it's very easy to read and things just make sense. It's just great. So that was amazing. I love London. Okay. Absolutely love London. I definitely want to go to Portugal because I didn't go last time. Okay. I've heard Greece is just absolutely breathtaking, so I want to go there. And then I also want to do something really challenging. Yeah. Like, I feel like Europe, like, I was there for 3 weeks, and I was so organized now with the cell phones and stuff. Yeah. Airbnbs, everything bought before. It's just so easy. It was just great. I want to go to, like, Japan or China, where it's going to be really hard. Okay. Where you can't read anything. You got to struggle. You got to just... That'll be an actual challenge for me. Life is just way too easy now with technology.
Okay. Japan and China. Yeah. All right, bro. Well, hope to have you back on the show, man. This has been a pleasure. Best of luck and best of success with all your ventures.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time, dude.
Awesome.
Thank you. It's amazing how many different points of discussion you can find in just a simple hour-long conversation. And I loved everything that Sean had to say. But one thing that I definitely want to emphasize, in case it was just so subtle that you missed it, is that you do not need to travel far from where you're from to have an adventure, to have a shift in perspective or experience. Most of the things we talked about were right here in North America. But the thing is, over there is that much different than you're from that you could really have a life-changing experience or an eye-opening experience. So thank you so much, Sean, for sharing your experience. Everyone follow him on Instagram at Sean Smith Dances. And if you want to see some of his professional work with the iconic Dallas Black Dance Theater, go to dbdt.com to see if they'll be performing in a city near you, because they are not only locally famous, but they are internationally known, y'all, and all their tickets sell out every show for years. So if you see something popping up in your city, in your hood, cop it, and cop it quickly. You'll have an amazing experience that night. Hope everybody enjoyed that session, and I want to know, just for my personal feedback, how do you feel about the live shows? Do you like the vibe? Do you like the energy? I really appreciate doing them, and if that's what you all want to hear more of, I will literally get on a plane and start meeting these people face to face, because I think it's dope, and maybe we can add video, but that's way out there. Just let me know what you think about it, and I'll definitely get right back to you in the DMs. That all being said, again, I'll be in Cartagena in a few months actually, July 26th through the 30th, with our friends at Black Travelgram, who have a little bit of a hookup for us, half off of your deposit fee up until March 6th. That code on their site, therealblacktravelgram.com, is Point Noir 50. POINTNOIR 50, and that's how you receive your extra discount, which again, you can use it to buy me shots or food. Like, I'd appreciate it. But it's going to be really cool. If you listen to the show a bit, you know how I feel about group travel trips. So I really fool with Black Travelgram to even be a part of the experience. And I'm looking forward to the experience they're curating. I know there's going to be Black history involved in it, Afro-Latino history there involved. There's going to be free time to explore. It's a beautiful city. I know you've seen a lot of the shots of the city on the gram. So definitely, if you're interested, check it out. Would love to meet you. And if we have enough people, real talk, we'll do a round table session or record something down there. Like, we'll make it work. But until then, I'll be checking out new kimonos to bring down to Colombia, because it'll be my first trip. Excited for one of the earlier stamps in my 2019 travel journey. So I hope you join us. Check out all the details at therealblacktravelgram.com. That all being said, looking forward to seeing you all next time. As always, I'm Jerry III, aka Kimono Jack, and I'll see you in the future. Peace.